A shy waitress is dragged toward a locked door, heart racing, when a cold voice cuts through the hall. The man everyone fears is standing there. He stops the assault in one move, then lays his jacket over her shoulders like a vow. Cameras go dark, orders fly, and the city's most dangerous protector quietly claims her safety. Then her problem becomes his war. But this isn't random. Someone cut the feeds. Someone wants the boss to expose his soft spot. A forged crest in old ledgers points to a traitor inside his own house, a sister's debt, a clinic that launders pain, a photo that makes the rescue look like a setup. Now corridors turn into battlegrounds, and the girl who fixes broken shelves becomes the one thing that could fix a broken king. Who set the trap, and who's the real target? When the trade is her life, will he choose blood or truth? And what happens when protection turns into obsession? The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the bathroom's grimy tiles. Mina's heart hammered against her ribs as Briggs's fingers dug into her arm, his alcohol-soured breath hot against her cheek. The bleach fumes burned her nostrils, making her eyes water. Or maybe that was fear. "Mr. Hale," Briggs stammered, his grip loosening slightly. "I didn't expect... Clearly..." Kellen's voice cut through the air like ice. He filled the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking any escape route. His dark suit absorbed the harsh lighting, and his expression remained unreadable, but his eyes, sharp and calculating, took in every detail of the scene. Mina forced herself to breathe, to think. She'd seen Kellen Hale before, always at a distance, always surrounded by an aura of careful violence. Up close, he radiated controlled power. His presence seemed to suck all the oxygen from the small space. Let her go. The words were quiet, but carried the weight of absolute authority. Briggs's fingers twitched on Mina's arm. She could feel him wavering, his earlier bravado crumbling in the face of real power. His other hand, the one that had been reaching for her face, dropped to his side. "Sir, I was just explaining proper protocol to... I won't repeat myself." Kellen stepped fully into the bathroom, letting the door swing shut behind him. The click of the latch echoed like a gunshot. Briggs released Mina so suddenly she stumbled, catching herself against the sink. Her arm throbbed where his fingers had been. She kept her eyes down, watching their reflections in the scratched mirror. Briggs, sweating and twitchy. Kellen, still as stone. Herself, pale but standing straight. "Miss Vale has been here 6 months," Kellen said, his tone conversational, in a way that made the hair on the back of Mina's neck rise. "Perfect attendance, no complaints, consistent deposits to Southside Medical Center." He paused, and Mina's head snapped up. How did he know about Lark's rehab payments? Briggs shifted his weight, cocaine-fueled confidence, warring with survival instinct. "She's not properly grateful for the opportunity." "Your definition of gratitude doesn't interest me." Kellen's eyes met Mina's in the mirror. "Miss Vale, do you have somewhere else to be?" She recognized the lifeline for what it was. "My shift ended at 2, sir." "Then you should leave." Mina hesitated. Walking past Kellen meant getting within arm's reach, but staying meant witnessing whatever was about to happen to Briggs, and she wasn't naive enough to think it would be pleasant. She made her choice, sliding along the wall toward the door. As she passed Kellen, she caught a whiff of expensive cologne and gunmetal. He moved slightly, giving her space without stepping back, a courtesy that somehow made her more nervous than Briggs's aggression. "Miss Vale?" Kellen's voice stopped her at the threshold. "You'll find Marcus at the service entrance. He'll ensure you reach your car safely." The implied "and make sure you leave" hung in the air. Mina nodded, not trusting her voice. Behind her, she heard Briggs start to speak again, his words cut off by what might have been movement, might have been something else. The hallway stretched before her, emergency lights casting red shadows on the walls. Her shoes clicked against the floor as she walked, each step measured and careful. She forced herself not to run, not to look back. The cameras that usually blinked their red eyes at passing staff were dark, and she wondered if that should frighten her more than it did. Her hands shook as she collected her coat from the break room. The night's tips were still stuffed in her apron pocket, enough to cover this week's payment to the clinic, barely. She thought of Lark, probably asleep in her narrow rehab bed, and steadied herself. The service entrance stood at the end of another long corridor, past the storage rooms and walk-in freezers. True to Kellen's word, a man in a dark suit waited there. Marcus, she assumed. He nodded to her, face professionally blank. "This way, Miss Vale." The night air hit her like a slap. clearing some of the bleach smell from her nose. Marcus walked 3 steps behind her all the way to her ancient Honda, his presence both reassuring and unsettling. She fumbled with her keys, wanting nothing more than to be home, to curl up in her small apartment and try to process what had just happened. As she slid behind the wheel, Marcus spoke again. "Drive safely, Miss Vale. Mr. Hale appreciates discretion." The message was clear. Whatever happened in that bathroom stayed there. Mina nodded again, started her car, and pulled out of the staff lot. In her rearview mirror, Marcus stood watching until she turned onto the main road. The late-night streets were nearly empty. Neon signs blurred past her windows, bars, convenience stores, the 24-hour diner where she worked morning shifts. Her hands still trembled on the steering wheel. She couldn't stop thinking about Kellen Hale's eyes in the mirror, the way he'd known about Lark's clinic, the careful space he'd given her to pass. At a red light, she touched her arm where Briggs had grabbed her. There would be bruises tomorrow, but something told her Briggs wouldn't be coming back to add more. She wasn't sure if that thought should comfort or terrify her. The light turned green. Mina drove on through the sleeping city toward her apartment and whatever tomorrow would bring. Behind her, the club's neon signs continued to paint the night in artificial colors, but she didn't look back. The crack of bone echoed off bathroom tile. Briggs's wrist bent at an impossible angle, his mouth open in a silent scream as Kellen released his arm with surgical precision. The club manager crumpled, cradling his shattered joint while Kellen adjusted his cufflinks. "Clear the service corridor," Kellen ordered the security guard who appeared in the doorway. "And bring ice." His eyes flickered to Mina, then back to the guard. "Not for him." Mina pressed herself against the wall, waiting for accusations. She'd seen enough workplace assaults to know how this usually played out. The victim became the instigator, especially when management was involved. But Kellen moved with deliberate care, shrugging off his suit jacket. The fabric whispered through the air as he draped it over her shoulders, never letting his fingers brush her skin. "Marcus," he called, and another suit materialized in the doorway. "Archive all security footage from the past hour. Pull employee files, particularly disciplinary records." His voice remained conversational, as if discussing the weather rather than orchestrating what felt like a crime scene cleanup. Briggs tried to speak, but Kellen silenced him with a look. "Medical attention is coming. I suggest you use this time to consider your next words very carefully." The ice arrived in a clean bar towel. Kellen accepted it with a nod, presenting it to Mina like an offering. She took it with trembling fingers, pressing it against her arm where Briggs's grip had left angry red marks. "The office," Kellen said, gesturing for her to precede him. "More private." The back office felt like another world, all leather and mahogany, far from the neon and chrome of the main club. Mina perched on the edge of a chair that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Kellen's jacket drowning her in wool and the lingering scent of expensive cologne. "Start from the beginning," he said, settling behind the desk. "Time, location, witnesses, everything you remember." Mina recounted the night in careful detail. Last call at 1:45, cleaning the service bar at 2:10, Briggs appearing at 2:15 with complaints about her attitude toward VIP customers. Her voice stayed steady until she described the bathroom, how he'd pushed her inside. The ice in her hand had started to melt. Kellen listened without interruption, his expression unchanged. Only his eyes moved, tracking her movements like a predator, assessing threat. Levels. When she finished, he reached for his phone, sending a brief text before returning his attention to her. "Briggs will be taking medical leave," he said, "effective immediately." The way he said medical leave made it clear that wherever Briggs was going, it wasn't to a hospital. Mina swallowed hard. "I should resign," she said, starting to remove his jacket. "I can't." "No." The word wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight to freeze her mid-motion. "That's not necessary or advisable. You're not safe to return home right now." Fear, which had receded to a dull throb, surged fresh in her veins. "What do you mean?" Briggs didn't act alone. Kellen's fingers drummed once on the desk, the only tell she'd seen from him all night. Someone disabled specific cameras. Someone gave him access to staff schedules he shouldn't have had. Until we determine the extent of the problem, you'll need protection. Protection. The word hung in the air like smoke. Mina thought of Lark in her rehab bed, of the carefully structured payment plan that kept her there. "I can't afford—" "This isn't a negotiation, Miss Vale." Kellen stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "It's a security measure." Through the office window, Mina could see the sky beginning to lighten, the first hint of dawn silvering the eastern horizon. The night shift was ending. Day staff would arrive soon. Normal people heading to normal jobs. unaware of broken wrists and disabled cameras and the way power moved in the shadows. Your sister's treatment won't be affected, Kellen said, reading her silence. The clinic will continue receiving payments as scheduled. Mina's head snapped up. How do you... I make it my business to know. He moved to the door, holding it open with that same careful distance he'd maintained all night. The car is waiting. The loading bay looked different in the pre-dawn light, all harsh shadows and sharp edges. A black SUV idled near the service entrance, its windows tinted beyond regulation. Kellen walked beside her, close enough to intervene if needed, but never touching. Your personal items will be collected from your apartment, he said as they approached the vehicle. Anything specific you need immediately? Mina thought of her sparse bedroom, the photo of Lark on the nightstand, the emergency cash hidden in her tampon box. My phone charger, she said, and the blue notebook in my desk drawer. Kellen nodded, as if memorizing a shopping list. The SUV's door opened smoothly, revealing leather seats and what looked like bulletproof panels. Mina hesitated at the threshold, suddenly aware that stepping into that car meant crossing a line she couldn't uncross. Miss Vale. Kellen's voice was quiet but clear. I understand your reluctance, but right now that car is the safest place in the city for you. The sky was definitely lighter now, the stars fading as dawn crept closer. Soon the morning shift would arrive, the cleaning crew would sanitize the bathroom, and the club would open its doors to another night of carefully managed debauchery. But Mina knew she wouldn't be part of that rhythm anymore. Whatever happened in that bathroom had set something bigger in motion. She climbed into the SUV, the leather seat cool against her legs. Kellen's jacket still hung from her shoulders, heavy with the weight of protection and threat combined. As the door closed beside her, she caught one last glimpse of him, standing in the loading bay, his figure sharp against the brightening sky. The SUV's interior hummed with quiet luxury, all butter-soft leather and climate control that kept the pre-dawn chill at bay. Mina wrapped her hands around the paper cup the driver had pressed into her grasp, some kind of herbal tea that smelled like chamomile and honey. She hadn't asked for it, but the warmth helped steady her trembling fingers. Kellen sat across from her, his phone dark in his lap, watching the city slide past tinted windows. The silence stretched until they merged onto the highway. Anyone who saw Briggs' corner, you will assume you have leverage now, he said without preamble. That makes you a target. Mina's grip tightened on the cup. I don't want leverage. I don't want anything. What you want is irrelevant. What matters is what they believe. His tone remained measured, almost gentle, but left no room for argument. You're under my protection until I say otherwise. 48 hours minimum to stabilize the situation. 48! The tea sloshed as she straightened. I need to contact Lark's clinic. My apartment. The one with the broken front lock? Kellen's eyebrow lifted slightly. The ground floor unit facing an unmonitored alley. Heat crept up Mina's neck. She'd complained to the building manager 3 times about that lock. How do you know where I live? The same way I know about your sister's payment plan. I verify everything about my employees. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim phone. This has 3 numbers programmed. Mine, my head of security, and an emergency operator who works exclusively for me. Keep it with you at all times. The phone felt heavy in her hand, weighted with implications. I can't afford... This isn't a transaction, Miss Vale. It's a security protocol. The city thinned out around them, high-rises replacing strip malls and convenience stores. They turned onto a private drive that curved up to a glass and steel tower, its upper floors lost in low clouds. The SUV descended into an underground garage where 2 men in suits waited near a private elevator. Kellen stepped out first, scanning the area before extending his hand to help her. Mina ignored it, clutching her tea and the new phone as she slid from the seat. His jacket shifted on her shoulders, still carrying traces of his cologne, something expensive and understated, like everything else about him. The elevator required both a key card and fingerprint scan. Mina watched the floor numbers climb into triple digits, her stomach dropping even as they rose. When the doors opened, she stepped into what looked like a magazine, spread for minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek furniture in grays and blacks, art pieces that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Guest room is down that hall, Kellen said, gesturing to the left. Kitchen's fully stocked, the balcony's locked for security reasons. His phone buzzed and he glanced at the screen. I need to take this. Club compliance issues. Make yourself comfortable. He moved toward what looked like a home office, his voice dropping into business tones as he answered. Mina stood in the center of the living room, still holding her now cold tea, feeling like a smudge on an otherwise perfect canvas. The guest room was bigger than her entire apartment, with its own bathroom and a walk-in closet currently empty. The bed looked cloud-soft, covered in charcoal gray linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She set the tea and phone on the nightstand, but couldn't bring herself to lie down. Instead, she drifted back to the living room windows. The city spread out below like a circuit board, streets becoming arteries of light as the sun retreated behind gathering clouds. Somewhere down there, Briggs was probably in a room much less comfortable than this one, learning exactly how many lines he'd crossed. The security panel by the door changed from green to red with a soft beep. Night mode activated. Mina pulled Kellen's jacket tighter, inhaling that subtle cologne again. She should take it off, return it, maintain whatever professional distance was possible in this situation. But the weight of it felt like armor, and right now she needed all the protection she could get. From the office, she could hear Kellen's voice, still calm, still controlled, but with an edge that made her glad she wasn't on the other end of that call. Words like audit and compliance and immediate review drifted through the partly open door. The clouds continued gathering, early morning gray turning darker with promises of rain. Mina watched a plane's lights blink across the sky, wondering if the passengers could see into this glass box in the clouds, if they could spot the small figure wearing a man's jacket like borrowed authority. Probably not. The windows likely had some kind of one-way coding, another layer of privacy and protection. The security system hummed quietly, a baseline note beneath the subtle sounds of climate control and distant traffic. Mina touched the glass, cool and thick beneath her fingers. Even this high up, even behind all these layers of security, she could feel the city's pulse, its dangers and desires, its promises and threats, all tangled together like the strings of lights below. Behind her, Kellen's voice grew sharper, more precise. Someone's job was ending, their access being revoked, their mistakes being cataloged with mathematical certainty. She wondered if this was how he'd sounded giving orders about Briggs, if he'd used that same tone of controlled menace while she sat in that back office holding melting ice. The clouds settled lower, obscuring the view of distant buildings. Soon the rain would start, washing away whatever evidence remained of last night's events. But Mina knew some marks couldn't be erased by weather. The memory of Briggs's fingers on her wrist, the sound of bones breaking, the weight of Kellen's jacket settling over her shoulders like a claim. The security system continued its quiet vigilance as morning fully arrived, gray and watchful. Whatever happened next, whatever 48 hours might bring, at least she was behind glass thick enough to stop bullets, high enough to see threats coming. For now, that would have to be enough. The soft beep of the elevator pulled Mina from sleep. Her body tensed before memory caught up. She was in Kellen's penthouse, in the guest room that made her apartment look like a closet. Sunlight filtered through automated blinds, carrying the rich scent of coffee. She found Kellen at the kitchen island, his suit jacket absent in favor of a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to expose strong forearms. Papers spread before him like a general's battle plans. He acknowledged her with a slight nod, never looking up from what appeared to be financial reports. "Coffee's fresh," he said, voice morning rough. "Cream in the fridge." The kitchen gleamed with unused potential, clearly more for show than function. Still, she located mugs easily enough, the organization logical if untouched. The coffee was exactly what she'd expect, something expensive and precise. "Groceries arriving at noon," Kellen continued, turning a page. "Along with some clothes, basic necessities." His tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "I have clothes at home," Mina said, testing. "You have clothes in a ground-floor apartment with a broken security door and 3 blind spots from the street." He finally looked up. "The delivery's already paid for." She sipped her coffee instead of arguing. The kitchen felt smaller with him in it, though he maintained careful distance. Every movement seemed calculated to avoid crowding her. "Here." He slid a paper across the granite. "Memorize these numbers. They're vetted. If you need anything, use only these contacts." The list was short. A grocery service, a pharmacy, a car service, all presumably on his payroll, her world contracting to what he deemed safe. "When you go out, after this is settled, watch for patterns," he said. "Same car twice. Someone matching your pace, phone out but not using it. Learning to spot a tail isn't paranoid if they're actually watching." She tested the elevator while he was in his office later. Keycard required, as expected. The balcony doors triggered a subtle warning chime when she tried the handle. Not a prison, technically, but close enough. Around 11, hunger drove her. Back to the kitchen. She found eggs, cheese, basic supplies. Cooking felt normal, even in this sterile space. She was whisking eggs when Kellen emerged from his office. "Making enough for two?" he asked, tone neutral. "Depends. Do you actually eat or do you photosynthesize business reports?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I eat." She made a simple omelet, nothing fancy. He ate standing up, still reading, but offered a quiet thank you that felt genuine. "Your security's very thorough," she said, testing the waters. "You found all the locks already?" "Just the obvious ones." "Good, means the others are doing their job." That almost smile again. The afternoon stretched, sunlight sliding across imported floors. A discreet delivery brought clothes in her size, basic, practical items that somehow looked expensive anyway. More groceries arrived, along with toiletries she hadn't thought to request. Kellen's phone buzzed constantly, but one call made him still completely. He listened more than spoke, his expression darkening. When he finished, he found her in the living room. "The cameras," he said without preamble. "Someone cut them before Briggs moved you?" "Not during before. We're pulling maintenance logs." The implication hung heavy. This wasn't random. Briggs hadn't acted alone. As evening approached, the city lights began their slow bloom. Mina drifted to the terrace windows, watching darkness climb the glass towers. Her hands shook slightly as she pressed them against the cool surface. Fabric settled across her shoulders, a soft wool blanket, charcoal gray, like everything else here. She hadn't heard Kellen approach, but there he was, looking out at the city beside her. Not touching, not speaking, just standing guard as police sirens wove red threads through the streets below. "They're heading downtown," he said after a while. "Third precinct." She nodded, grateful for the mundane observation. The blanket was heavy, grounding, like his jacket had been. They watched the city pulse with light and shadow, each lost in private calculations. Kellen's phone stayed silent in his pocket. The security system hummed its quiet vigil. Somewhere below, those sirens were reaching their destination, but up here, suspended in glass and steel, time moved differently. The tremor in her hands gradually stilled, though whether from the blanket's warmth or Kellen's steady presence, she couldn't say. The city spread out before them like a map of possibilities, some bright, some dark, all connected by streets that looked deceptively orderly from this height. More sirens joined the first, creating patterns of emergency against the growing dark. Kellen tracked them with subtle head movements, probably calculating districts and jurisdictions. Mina just watched the lights dance, letting the blanket and the height and the quiet company hold her steady, while night claimed the city piece by piece. The security system cycled with a soft beep. Another check, another, all clear. In the reflection of the glass, Mina could see them both. Her small frame, wrapped in soft gray wool, his larger one alert and watchful. Two people thrown together by violence, finding unexpected peace in shared silence and distant sirens. The city continued its evening transformation, office lights winking out as neon took over. Heat radiated from the glass, the day's warmth trapped and slowly released. The blanket was probably unnecessary now, but Mina kept it wrapped tight, a shield against whatever tomorrow might bring. They stood there watching emergency vehicles weave their patterns, neither speaking, neither moving. Just observing their temporary sanctuary's view of a city that felt simultaneously immediate and impossibly distant, real and abstract, dangerous and beautiful, like everything else about this strange new reality. The basement office reeked of old concrete and fresh fear. Kellen stood with his back to the wall, watching the runner twitch in his chair. No restraints needed, the man's own terror held him there more effectively than rope. "One more time," Kellen said quietly. "From the beginning." The runner swallowed hard. "Briggs got the call 3 weeks ago. Said to watch for you showing up unexpected. Said to make sure you saw something specific. Something involving Mina Vale." "Yeah, they wanted proof you had a—" The runner hesitated. "A what?" "A soft spot, boss. Said if you stepped in, it'd confirm their theory." Kellen's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "And Briggs agreed." "Said it was an easy job. Get the girl alone, rough her up a little, make it look bad enough you'd notice." The runner's words tumbled faster. "Wasn't supposed to actually hurt her, just scare her enough to draw you out." "Who made the call?" "Don't know the name. Briggs handled it direct." Kellen nodded to his fixer, who stepped forward with a tablet. "Look through these photos. Point to anyone you've seen with Briggs." The runner's finger shook as he scrolled, then stopped. "Him. Met twice behind the club." Kellen memorized the face, then left without another word. The fixer would handle cleanup. Back at the penthouse, he found Mina by the windows, a book abandoned in her lap. She looked up when he entered, reading his expression. "You found something," she said. "Yes." He set his jacket aside, rolled up his sleeves. "You weren't random, Mina. They chose you specifically." She went very still. "Why?" Instead of answering, he pulled out his phone, brought up surveillance photos. "Do you recognize anyone here?" Mina took the phone, scrolled carefully, her breath caught. "This man. He came to Lark's clinic 3 months ago, said he was evaluating facilities for charitable donations." Kellen's jaw tightened. "You're sure?" "Yes." He spent an hour touring, asking questions about patient care costs, reviewing their financial assistance programs. She looked up, sharply. "The clinic's involved?" "It's starting to look that way." Kellen moved to the kitchen island, opened his laptop. "My accountant's breaking open their shell companies now. Healthcare's perfect for laundering, high overhead, constant cash flow, complicated billing." "The debt collectors," Mina said suddenly. "They kept finding new charges, adding fees. No matter how much we paid, the balance never really went down." Kellen's fingers stilled on the keyboard. His expression emptied to something dangerous. "Tell me everything. Start with when Lark first checked in." Mina wrapped her arms around herself, moved to sit across from him. "It was 3 years ago. Car accident. They said random, but now I wonder. The initial care was covered by insurance, but then complications kept coming up. New treatments, specialist consultations, equipment rentals. They trapped you in the billing cycle." "Yes, I took the club job to cover the payments. They said they had a special financing program for families in need." Her laugh was bitter. "Should have known it was too good to be true." Kellen's phone buzzed. He read the message, jaw clenching. "My accountant found the pipeline. They're running millions through that clinic, using patient accounts as cover." The sun was setting now, painting the penthouse in deep orange. Mina watched shadows climb the walls. "What happens now?" "Now," Kellen said carefully, "I need you to tell me everything. Every detail about the clinic, the collectors, the payment plans, even the parts that hurt to remember." She met his eyes. "And then?" "Then I shut them down. Permanently." He leaned forward slightly. "But I need the full picture first. Will you help me?" Mina took a deep breath, squared her shoulders. "Yes, I'll tell you everything." They spent the next hour with Mina outlining payment schedules, listing names of billing staff, describing the collection agency's tactics. Kellen took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally asking for clarification, but never interrupting her flow. The sky outside turned purple, then deep blue. City lights bloomed against the darkness. Kellen's phone buzzed periodically with updates from his team, but he kept his attention focused on Mina's account. She described the endless cycle of new charges, the way hope drained with each statement, how the collectors always seemed to call it work, making it hard to keep jobs, the helpful staff who suggested additional treatments, each with its own payment plan. Kellen's notes grew more detailed. Names, dates, amounts, building a framework of fraud around Mina's personal experience. His expression remained neutral, but his grip on the pen tightened at certain details. When she finished, silence filled the penthouse. Kellen reviewed his notes, then looked up at Mina. "Thank you. This helps more than you know." She nodded, exhausted by the recounting. "What happens to Lark?" "We'll transfer her to a legitimate facility. One of mine." He closed his notebook. "No more debt traps." Relief softened Mina's posture. "And the clinic?" "Leave that to me." His tone was gentle but final. "Focus on your sister." Outside, the city hummed with night traffic. Inside, plans were already forming behind Kellen's careful expression. Mina watched him check his phone again, saw the subtle shift in his shoulders that meant action was coming. "Rest," he said, standing. "I'll have updates tomorrow." She nodded, knowing sleep would be difficult, but grateful for the dismissal. The weight of 3 years of worry had been transferred to Kellen's capable hands, and despite everything, she felt lighter. He watched her head to the guest room, then turned back to his phone, fingers flying over the keys. The pipeline wouldn't survive the night, but first he had to ensure all the evidence was secured. Patient records would need protection, transfers would need arrangement, and certain people would need very careful handling. The city spread out below, unaware of the changes coming. Inside the penthouse, plans unfolded with quiet precision while Mina finally slept without death's shadow hanging over her dreams. "First rule," Kellen said, standing in the penthouse kitchen as morning light streamed through the windows. "Always take the elevator with your back to the corner." Mina nodded, cradling her coffee mug. "To see everyone who enters, and control your exit points." He moved with practiced efficiency, demonstrating the stance. "When you're in public spaces, sit with your back to a wall, never the center of a room." "Like in movies?" A small smile touched her lips. "Life isn't a movie, but sometimes the basics align." His expression remained serious. "In cafes, choose tables near service exits. Keep your phone on silent, no location sharing." Mina absorbed the instructions, filing them away. The morning stretched into lessons on situational awareness, each rule delivered in Kellen's measured tone. He showed her how to spot a tail, how to verify if a car was following, how to make herself less visible in a crowd. "Your turn to teach," she said after lunch, eyeing the kitchen's gleaming but clearly unused equipment. Kellen raised an eyebrow. "I have people who cook." "And what happens when they're not around?" She opened the refrigerator, surveying the delivered groceries. "Besides, cooking is safer than takeout. No unknown variables." Something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. "Fair point." She guided him through basic knife skills, correcting his grip as he chopped vegetables. The domestic scene felt surreal, a crime boss learning to dice onions in his designer kitchen. When he nicked his finger, she showed him how to wrap it properly. "There's a shelf in the guest room," Mina mentioned, washing dishes. "It's cracked, but salvageable." Kellen looked up from his phone. "I can have it replaced. Or we could fix it." She dried her hands. "Sometimes keeping what works is better than starting new." They ended up in the guest room, Mina demonstrating how to reinforce the crack with careful layers of strong tape. Kellen watched with unexpected interest as she explained the technique. "Patience over force," she said, smoothing the final layer. "My dad taught me that." Kellen tested the shelf's strength. "Smart man." "Was." She smiled slightly, but his lessons stuck. The afternoon light was fading when Kellen's phone buzzed. His expression hardened as he read the message. "Work to handle. Stay here." In his office, Kellen's voice turned to ice as he ordered the systematic removal of the club's corrupt management. His words were precise, clinical, protecting Mina from details while ensuring thorough cleanup. The calls lasted an hour, each one shorter and more final than the last. When he returned to the main room, Mina was preparing dinner. "I'm teaching you pasta tonight," she announced. "Real pasta, not the boxed kind." They moved around each other in the narrow kitchen space, an unexpected dance of domestic proximity. Kellen followed her instructions with the same focus he gave to everything, measuring ingredients exactly. "Here!" Mina reached for the pan handle at the same moment he did. Their hands brushed, sending an electric current through the point of contact. Time suspended for a heartbeat as neither moved. Kellen pulled back first, jaw tightening. He stepped away, putting careful distance between them. "I need to make a call." He arranged the night guard while Mina finished cooking, their earlier easy rhythm replaced by careful awareness. They ate in relative silence, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. "Thank you," Kellen said as she cleared the plates. "For the lessons." She nodded, understanding he meant more than cooking. "Thank you for yours." The evening settled into quiet routine. Mina read on the couch while Kellen worked at the kitchen island, the guard a discreet presence by the elevator. Just after midnight, a soft chime broke the silence. Kellen frowned at his phone. "Maintenance alert." He stood, checking the security feed. "Stay in your room until I clear it." "What is it?" "Probably nothing." His tone was careful. "But we verify everything." Mina retreated to the guest room, hearing Kellen's quiet instructions to the guard. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the silence of the penthouse. Minutes stretched. Then, soft but clear, a knock at the door. Through the crack beneath her door, she saw the guard's shadow shift, his hand moving toward his holster. The elevator dinged softly as the maintenance worker stepped into the hallway. Something in his posture made Mina's skin prickle, the way he held his right arm too stiffly, concealing something beneath his gray coveralls. Time compressed into heartbeats. 1. The guard's hand touched his weapon. 2. The worker reached beneath his jacket. 3. Kellen moved. He flowed like mercury, deadly and precise. Before the intruders, gun cleared his clothes. Kellen had already closed the distance. His hand clamped down on the suppressed weapon while his other arm drove up in a savage strike. The gun clattered to the carpet as the man's wrist snapped. Mina's gasp caught in her throat. The entire exchange had taken seconds. The intruder tried to twist free, but Kellen's knee found his solar plexus with surgical accuracy. As the man folded, Kellen drove him face first into the wall, zip ties appearing from his pocket. "Clear the floor," he ordered the guard. "Full sweep. Now." Only when the threat was secured did Kellen turn to Mina. Something raw flickered across his face, not the controlled violence of moments before, but genuine fear. His hands trembled slightly as they ghosted over her arms, checking for injuries she couldn't have sustained. "I'm okay," she whispered, surprised by the gentleness of his inspection. Kellen's phone was already at his ear. "Marcus, breach attempt. Need cleanup and trace on a spoofed maintenance badge. Full building scan." His voice was winter itself. "Find the gap." The intruder lay silent, breathing shallowly through what was likely a broken nose. Blood dotted the cream carpet. "You should sleep," Kellen said, but his eyes never left the hallway. "I'll have the team here in 10. "Sleep?" Mina's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "Someone just tried to... and failed." His tone softened marginally. "They won't get another chance." The adrenaline coursed through her system, making everything sharper. She noticed details with crystalline clarity. The faint cologne clinging to Kellen's shirt, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the way his lips pressed into a thin line as he studied her face. She swayed slightly, the crash beginning. Kellen's hands caught her shoulders, steadying her. The contact sent electricity arcing between them, charged by leftover adrenaline and something deeper. Their faces were inches apart. Mina felt the subtle shift in his breathing, saw his pupils dilate. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her, wanted him to kiss her, with an intensity that surprised her. Kellen stepped back, his voice rough. "Not like this." He ran a hand through his hair. "I won't take anything born from fear." The moment shattered like glass. 2 men in dark suits appeared from the elevator, efficiently removing the would-be assassin. A security team swept through with detection equipment, checking for additional threats. Through it all, Kellen remained a constant presence, coordinating the response while keeping Mina in his line of sight. When the immediate crisis passed, he dragged a chair to her bedroom doorway. "Try to rest," he said, settling into it with fluid grace. A matte black pistol rested across his thigh, deadly promise in polished steel. "You can't sit there all night," Mina protested. "Watch me." His smile held no humor. She left the door open, drawing comfort from his silhouette in the darkness. The sheets still, smelled of laundry detergent, a jarringly normal detail in this surreal night. Despite her racing thoughts, exhaustion eventually pulled her under. She woke briefly around 3, finding Kellen still motionless in his vigil. His eyes met hers in the darkness, and something unspoken passed between them before sleep reclaimed her. The next time she opened her eyes, early morning light was painting the walls gold. Kellen's chair was empty, but she heard quiet voices in the main room. Following the sound, she found him accepting a thick manila envelope from a courier. "The clinic's records," he explained as the courier departed. "Their bookkeeper made some interesting choices last night." Mina recognized the implication in his tone. "They talked?" "People usually do." He set the envelope on the dining table with deliberate care. "Coffee first, then we'll go through these together." She watched him move to the kitchen, his movements precise despite the sleepless night. The coffee maker hummed to life under his hands. "You stayed there all night," she said softly. Kellen didn't turn around. "Yes." "Why?" Now he did look at her, his expression complicated. "You know why." The coffee maker beeped, breaking the moment. He poured 2 cups, adding cream to hers, without asking. He'd noticed how she took it. The small detail made her throat tight. "Whatever's in those files," he said, setting her cup down. "We face it together." The morning sun caught his face, highlighting shadows of fatigue and determination in equal measure. Despite the violence of the night, despite the danger still lurking, Mina felt oddly safe. The man who could snap bones without hesitation had also watched over her sleep, had learned her coffee preference, had refused to take advantage of her fear. Together, she agreed, reaching for the first file. The morning light spilled across ledgers and bank statements scattered on the dining table. Mina's fingers traced column after column of numbers, each representing months of double shifts and overtime hours. Her neat handwriting marked suspicious patterns in red ink, regular payments to a company she'd never questioned when signing Lark's treatment forms. Here, she said, tapping a recurring transfer. Every month, like clockwork. They said it was for specialized therapy equipment. Kellen leaned closer, his shoulder barely brushing hers. The warmth of him radiated through his crisp shirt, still fresh, despite the sleepless night. Shell company, he confirmed, voice tight. Classic laundering setup. She rubbed her temples. I should have seen it. No. His tone left no room for argument. They're professionals. This is what they do. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the rustle of papers and the soft clink of coffee cups. Mina noticed Kellen's fingers drumming against the table, the first sign of agitation she'd seen from him. Finally, he stood, movements deliberate as he faced the window. I need to show you. Something? His fingers went to his shirt buttons. Mina's breath caught, but this wasn't seduction. He opened his shirt just enough to reveal a savage scar carved under his ribs. Old, but the anger of it still visible in raised tissue. 8 years ago, he said quietly. Someone thought they could use me as leverage. My father's second-in-command had a daughter, I thought. He broke off, jaw tight. Doesn't matter what I thought. She played her part well. Understanding dawned. She set you up. Got me exactly where they wanted me. His laugh held no humor. Left me bleeding in a warehouse while they hit 3 of our strongest holdings. Nearly collapsed the whole syndicate. He rebuttoned his shirt, but the vulnerability remained raw between them. I swore after that, no weaknesses, no leverage points, nothing anyone could use against me. Mina's heart hammered against her ribs. And now? Now? His eyes met hers, dark with something that made her shiver. Now you're already under my skin, already a risk I can't afford, and I can't make myself walk away. The confession hung in the air, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to voice. Mina broke first, looking down at her hands. Every extra dollar, she whispered. Every tip, every holiday bonus. It all went to them, to keep Lark safe, to keep her healing. I would have sold everything I owned. Kellen's hand covered hers, calloused fingers gentle despite their strength. Show me the accounts again. They bent over the papers together, his presence steady at her shoulder. Suddenly, he stiffened. These numbers. He pulled out his phone, comparing sequences. They match a chain of laundromats owned by the Cortez family. Front businesses, all of them. Your rivals? Enemies. The word carried death in it. And now we know where they're moving the money. He studied the clinic's address. They'll have paper records, older stuff that never made it to digital. In the storage room, Mina said. I've seen it, rows of filing cabinets in the basement. Kellen's expression sharpened. Security? Basic key card access. 1 guard who does rounds every hour. He nodded slowly. Midnight pull. Less staff. Easier to control variables. His eyes found hers. You don't have to come. Yes, I do. Her voice was stronger than she felt. I know the filing system. They spent the afternoon planning entry points and escape routes. Kellen taught her simple hand signals, made her practice until they were muscle memory. As evening approached, he outfitted her with a dark jacket and silent shoes. If anything feels wrong, he insisted, tap your ear twice. My team will have eyes on every exit. The clinic's parking lot was empty when they arrived, save for the guard's car. Kellen disabled the camera feed with practiced ease while Mina swiped them through the service entrance. The basement corridors echoed with the hum of fluorescent lights. 10 minutes until the next round, she whispered. They moved like shadows through the storage room. Mina's fingers flew over file tabs while Kellen kept watch, his body coiled with lethal readiness. The minutes ticked by in heartbeats. She was almost ready to give up when she found it, a leather-bound ledger tucked behind newer files. The cover fell open to reveal a familiar crest, the Hale Syndicate symbol stamped in fading ink on a page dated 5 years ago. Kellen, she breathed. He turned, and for the first time since she'd met him, surprise cracked through his careful control. The ledger trembled in her hands as pieces started falling into place. Connections she wasn't ready to make, implications that threatened to shatter everything she thought she knew about Lark's accident. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Kellen moved without sound, gathering her close against the shadows. His heartbeat was steady against her back as the guard passed, whistling tunelessly. The ledger burned between them like a live wire, its secrets still untold. But they had what they came for. Proof of something bigger than either of them had imagined. We need to go, Kellen murmured against her ear. Now! They retraced their steps through the silent building, the ledger secure in her jacket. Every shadow seemed to hold new meaning, every closed door concealed possible threats. But Kellen's presence remained constant, his hand at her lower back, guiding her through the darkness. The night air hit her face like a blessing. They slipped into the waiting car, adrenaline still singing through her veins. The ledger sat heavy in her lap, 5 years of history waiting to be uncovered. Kellen's hand found hers in the darkness of the back seat. He didn't speak, didn't need to. Whatever truth lay in those pages would change everything, and they both knew it. The guard's footsteps faded down the corridor, but Kellen's hand stayed pressed against Mina's waist, holding her against the file cabinet's cold metal. Their breaths mingled in the dim storage room, hearts thundering from the near miss. The tension that had been building for days crystallized in that moment. "That was too close," Mina whispered, her voice shaky. Kellen's grip tightened fractionally. "We need to—" A crash echoed from the hallway. The guard had knocked something over, closer than expected. Kellen spun Mina behind a tall shelf, caging her with his body. The movement brought their faces inches apart. Time stretched like honey, thick and sweet. Then everything happened at once. Mina's fingers curled into his shirt. Kellen's control, that iron discipline he'd maintained since the moment they met, snapped. His mouth found hers in the darkness, desperate and hungry. She gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, one hand tangling in her hair while the other kept her close. The kiss tasted of adrenaline and need, of all the words they hadn't said. Mina pressed closer, feeling the solid warmth of him, the thundering of his heart matching hers. His tongue swept across her bottom lip, and she opened for him, letting out a soft whimper that made his fingers flex against her hip. The guard's whistle pierced their bubble. They broke apart, breathing hard, lips tingling. Kellen's eyes were dark, dangerous with want, but he stepped back, duty before desire. "We need to finish searching," he said roughly, voice still thick with kisses. Mina nodded, touching her swollen lips. They split up, methodically working through different sections. The only sounds were rustling papers and their uneven breathing. "Got something," Kellen murmured after 10 minutes. He stood at a filing cabinet, staring at a single page with an intensity that made Mina's skin prickle. She started toward him, but he quickly folded the paper and tucked it into his jacket. Something in his face had changed, a shadow of guilt, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. "What did you find?" "Possible lead." His voice was carefully neutral. "Need to verify some details first." Before she could press further, footsteps approached again. They exchanged a look and began their careful retreat. The loading dock offered their best exit, but required perfect timing between security rounds. They pressed against the wall near the dock's entrance, waiting for the guard to pass. Mina's heart wouldn't slow. Whether from lingering adrenaline or the memory of Kellen's mouth on hers, she couldn't tell. His presence behind her felt like a live wire, charging the air between them. The guard's radio crackled, and he turned down another hallway. Kellen tapped Mina's shoulder, their signal. They slipped through the loading bay doors, into the pre-dawn air, where a black SUV waited in the shadows. The ride back was electric with unspoken words. Mina caught Kellen touching his lips once, quickly, like he was checking if they were as bruised as hers felt. Neither spoke. The weight of whatever he'd found in those files hung between them, along with the heat of that desperate kiss. They reached the penthouse as the sky began to lighten. Mina headed straight for the coffee maker. She wouldn't be sleeping anyway. Kellen disappeared into his office, that folded paper burning a hole in his pocket. The TV hummed in the background, morning news cycling through headlines. Mina was adding cream to her coffee when a familiar image flashed across the screen. She froze, mug halfway to her lips. There she was, pressed against Kellen outside the club that first night. But the photo had been altered. The timestamp changed to weeks before the incident with Briggs. The caption scrolled beneath. "Hale Syndicate boss plants honey trap?" The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. Coffee spread like blood across the tiles. Kellen emerged from his office at the sound, saw the TV, and his face went deadly still. "Mina!" She turned to him, fury and betrayal burning in her chest. "Did you know?" Her voice shook. "Was any of it real, or was I just bait from the beginning?" The doctored photo played again, mocking them both. The kiss in the storage room, still tingling on her lips, suddenly felt like ash in her mouth. Trust, so carefully built over these days together, trembled like a house of cards in a storm. Kellen took a step toward her, hands raised. "That photo is a lie. You know when we met. You know." "Do I?" The words tasted bitter. You're hiding something right now. I saw your face in the storage room. What was on that paper you wouldn't show me? The morning light painted harsh shadows across his features as he struggled with whatever secret he was keeping. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, filled with the TV anchor's voice discussing the developing scandal. Coffee continued spreading across the floor, seeping into the grout lines like tiny rivers. Neither moved to clean it up. They stood frozen in this moment of fracture, while everything they'd built together hung by a thread. The photo flashed again, a digital ghost mocking their raw wounds. Mina's hands clenched at her sides, nails biting into palms. Kellen's mask slipped for just a moment, showing something like desperation in his eyes. The sun crept higher outside, painting the city in shades of gold, but in the penthouse, shadows deepened between them. The distance from that heated kiss in the storage room to this moment of doubt felt infinite. Trust, once cracked, was harder to repair than the shattered mug at their feet. The coffee puddle spread across the kitchen floor, forgotten in the weight of accusations hanging between them. "How long?" Mina's voice cracked. "How long have you really known about me?" Kellen's jaw tightened. "The photo is doctored. You know when we met. But you weren't surprised, were you? You had security feeds, safe houses, escape routes all ready." Her hands trembled. "You've been 2 steps ahead of every threat like you were waiting for them." The morning light cut harsh angles across his face as he weighed his words. "I suspected an inside trader. Someone using the clinic, using debt to create pressure points." He kept his distance, knowing touch would only wound now. "The protection protocols weren't about you specifically. They were about catching whoever was corrupting my operation." "So I was what? Convenient bait?" The hurt in her voice scraped raw. "No." The word came sharp, final. "You were an innocent caught in their game. I needed to protect you while smoking them out." Mina moved to his office, drawn by an awful certainty. The safe stood open from his earlier retrieval. Inside, partially visible, lay a familiar stamp, the same crest she'd seen in the clinic's files. Her fingers brushed the metal edge. "This links back to Lark's accident, doesn't it? To all of it." Kellen's silence was answer enough. "You knew!" Her voice broke. "You knew, and you didn't tell me. I need a few hours." He spoke carefully. "The signature chain, the authorization path. More secrets, more time." She backed away. "I can't breathe in here anymore." "Mina?" His tone shifted to urgent command. "There's a wiretap operation happening. You need to stay." "I need to think," she cut him off. "Somewhere that isn't here." For a moment, she thought he might stop her. His hands flexed at his sides, control warring with protection. Then he pulled out his phone. "Take Marcus as your driver. Choose anywhere secure, hotel, friend's place, doesn't matter." Each word seemed to cost him. "He'll sweep for surveillance before you enter." She nodded once, throat too tight for words. "Keep your emergency phone on." It wasn't quite a request. "I'll have the signature verification by tonight." Mina gathered her few belongings, avoiding his gaze. The elevator ride down felt endless. Marcus, a silent shadow beside her. In the car, she watched Kellen's building recede in the mirror. He stood at the window, a dark figure against glass, until they turned the corner. She chose a short-term rental in a secure building, knowing he'd check the location's safety profile. Marcus did his sweep, nodded once, and left her alone with her thoughts. Across town, Kellen deployed a watcher to the building opposite, close enough to respond, far enough to give her space. Then he dove into the signature chain, tracing the stamp's path through years of records. The hours crawled. Each authorization led to another, a maze of paperwork and power transfers. Finally, near sunset, he found it, the crucial link. The stamp hadn't been in his possession during Lark's accident. It had belonged to a subordinate, one who'd later disappeared with significant funds. The truth wouldn't fix everything, but at least it wasn't his hands that had shattered her family. Meanwhile, Mina paced her temporary apartment, phone dark except for one message sent to the clinic. "No more payments." She touched her lips, remembering the desperate kiss in the storage room. How quickly certainty could crumble, trust could crack. The city lights began to bloom outside her window, each one a tiny sun that couldn't warm the chill in her chest. Miles apart, they both lay awake as night deepened. Kellen stared at his ceiling, the stamp's weight heavy in his pocket, wondering if truth would be enough to rebuild what secrets had broken. In her borrowed bed, Mina watched shadows dance across unfamiliar walls, trying to separate manipulation from protection in her memory of their days together. Neither slept. The night stretched endless between them, filled with words unsaid and truths half revealed. Outside their windows, the city hummed on, indifferent to the wreckage of trust scattered like broken glass between two people who dared to believe in something fragile and real. Kellen's phone stayed silent, though his thumb hovered over her number a dozen times. Each time he pulled back, knowing she needed this space to process, to decide if she could forgive the necessary lies that had tangled with genuine care. In her temporary sanctuary, Mina wrapped herself in borrowed blankets that smelled of nothing familiar. The kiss in the storage room played on repeat in her mind. The desperation, the relief, the truth of it. Or had that been another calculated move in this chess game she hadn't known she was playing? The hours ticked by, marked by distant sirens and the quiet hum of the city's night pulse. Both lay in their separate spaces, equally wrecked by the weight of what remained unspoken between them. The truth about the stamp waited like a bomb in Kellen's pocket, while Mina's silence echoed through his empty penthouse, like a ghost of trust betrayed. Dawn approached with merciless steadiness, promising another day of choices and consequences, of truth and trust hanging in the balance. But for now, they remained apart, each counting the hours until morning would force them to face what remained of their carefully built connection. Rain drummed against the parking garage's concrete, creating a steady rhythm that matched Kellen's heartbeat as he cornered Beck against a black sedan. The stamp's evidence had led him here, to his most trusted lieutenant, the betrayal bitter as bile in his throat. Beck's head cracked against the hood with a dull thud. Talk. Always so direct. Beck's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's why you never saw it coming. Kellen's fingers dug deeper into Beck's collar. The crest. Lark's accident. Start there. It was beautiful, really. Beck's voice held an edge of pride. Selling your stamp created such perfect cover for the missing funds. The accident just cleaned up the loose ends. No one looks too closely at medical payouts. Rain trickled down Kellen's face like cold tears. And Mina? She was supposed to be simple leverage. Beck's laugh turned ugly. But you had to make it complicated, didn't you? Getting attached, making her matter. Kellen's control slipped, his forearm pressed against Beck's throat. The end game, now. Tonight. Beck wheezed but kept his smirk. The club. Your little waitress becomes my tribute to seal new alliances. Briggs's replacement already has his instructions. Kellen released him just enough to breathe. Time? Midnight delivery? Beck straightened his collar with practiced nonchalance. You know how these things work. Proof of life, clean exchange, everybody wins. Well, his smile turned predatory. Almost everybody. Across town, shadows lengthened as Mina stepped out of the short-term rental. The paper bag of fresh groceries felt warm against her chest, soup and soft bread for Lark, a peace offering after the canceled payments. She didn't notice the van until it was too late. Two men in clinic uniforms approached with practiced casualness. Ms. Vale, your sister's having a reaction. We're here to transport you. Before she could scream, they had her. The groceries scattered across wet pavement as rough hands secured, zip ties around her wrists. Her phone clattered away, screen cracking on impact. The club's bass vibrated through the service entrance walls as they hustled her inside. The same hallway, the same flickering lights. But this time, no Kellen in the shadows to stop it. One guard checked his phone. Get the shot for proof of life. The flash left spots in Mina's vision. She blinked them away, taking in details with the situational awareness Kellen had drilled into her. 3 exits, 2 armed men, cameras dead, just like that first night. They settled her in a chair, zip ties biting into her skin. The bathroom door loomed opposite. That same damn bathroom where everything had started. Above, the faulty light hummed its monotonous song. In his car, Kellen's phone buzzed with the photo. Mina's face, pale but composed, those eyes he knew too well, now showing more anger than fear. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. The rain made mirrors of the streets as he drove, each reflection holding memories. Mina's hands steady on a kitchen knife, her smile when she fixed his shelf, the trust in her eyes before he'd shattered it with secrets. Beck's betrayal wasn't just business, it was personal. Every move calculated over years, the stolen crest, Lark's orchestrated injury, the slow bleeding of funds through the clinic's books. And now Mina, collected like some final trophy in his game. The wipers kept their metronomic beat as Kellen reviewed the pieces. Beck had played him perfectly, using his own protection of Mina to prove she was valuable leverage. The leaked photo, the surveillance, even Briggs's clumsy attack, all carefully arranged to show Kellen's weakness. Rain pelted the windshield as he remembered Beck's earlier warnings about getting too close to assets, about maintaining distance. Every concerned comment now revealed as reconnaissance, testing the depth of Kellen's involvement. The city lights blurred past as he drove, each green light a small mercy, speeding him toward her. In his mind, he mapped the club's layout. Service corridor angles, camera blind spots, the ventilation shaft that could carry sound from the back office. He'd built his empire on control, on never being leveraged through attachment. Beck had counted on that history, had used it to blind Kellen to the obvious. Sometimes caring was not weakness, but strength. Sometimes the very thing that made you vulnerable also made you dangerous. The proof-of-life photo glowed on his phone screen at a red light. Despite everything, the betrayal, the fear, the zip ties cutting into her wrists, Mina's eyes held that same quiet defiance he'd first seen in his penthouse. She wasn't broken. She wasn't begging. She was waiting, thinking, using everything he'd taught her about staying alive. Back in the club's corridor, Mina focused on her breathing just as Kellen had shown her. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Keep your mind clear. Watch the patterns. 2 guards traded shifts every 15 minutes. The bathroom door hung slightly off its hinges from that first night's confrontation. The camera in the corner remained dark, its red light dead. The faulty light continued its endless drone, a sound that had haunted her dreams since that first encounter with Briggs. Now it became her timer, each flicker marking seconds closer to whatever came next. Rain pattered against high windows somewhere in the distance. The same storm that had soaked her groceries, now scattered across pavement where anyone could see them. A beacon, maybe, if the right person drove past. If they were looking, if they understood what an abandoned bag of soup and bread might mean. The zip ties bit deeper as she shifted, testing their give. Her wrists would bruise, but that didn't matter. What mattered was staying present, staying sharp. Kellen had taught her that too. Pain was information, fear was fuel, and every second breathing was another second to plan. The staff door opened silently, its hinges freshly oiled by Kellen's advance team. He moved like a shadow given purpose, each step measured against the throbbing bass that masked his approach. Through his earpiece came the whispered confirmation. Alarms looped, exits sealed, civilians cleared from the back areas. The first guard went down without a sound, a precise strike to the throat, followed by a knee to the temple. Kellen caught the body before it could thud against the floor, easing it aside. His eyes never left Mina's position down the corridor, using the mirrors mounted high in the corners to track movement behind him. 2 more guards flanked the hallway intersection. Kellen dealt with them efficiently, a thrown knife taking one in the shoulder while he closed distance with the other, snapping the man's arm at the elbow. No guns fired yet, no alerts raised, just the wet sounds of impact and stifled groans. Mina watched this controlled violence with clear eyes, her mind racing. The champagne bucket by her feet caught the light, heavy steel, serrated lip where it had dented. When her closest captor shifted his weight, distracted by the sounds of combat, she acted. The bucket connected with his knee at full force. He stumbled, cursing, and Mina was already moving. She pressed the zip tie against the bucket's serrated edge, sawing with desperate precision. Kellen had taught her this. Use what's available, create opportunity from chaos. Her hands came free just as Briggs's replacement, a thin man with dead eyes, grabbed her arm. He tried to pull her in front of him, a human shield against Kellen's advance. Stop, or I'll... Kellen was already moving, positioning himself to give Mina cover while maintaining a clear shot. 1 round, perfectly placed. The man dropped, clutching his shoulder, gun clattering away. Predictable, came a smooth voice from the office doorway. Beck emerged, straightening his cuffs with elegant disdain. Always. The hero, aren't you, Kellen? So quick to save the damsel. Blood stained Beck's expensive shoes, where he'd stepped over fallen guards. His smile never reached his eyes as he spread his hands. 1 last offer. The girl for the waterfront territory. Clean trade. No more games. You can even keep your reputation for being untouchable. Kellen's response was physical poetry. 3 steps closing distance, a grab that twisted Beck off balance, and a precise strike that shattered his jaw. Beck collapsed to his knees, that smooth facade finally cracking into something ugly and afraid. Mina? Kellen's voice was winter-given form. Your call. What does justice look like here? She studied Beck, seeing past the designer suit to the rot beneath. This man had orchestrated Lark's injury, had built a system to drain desperate families dry, had tried to trade her life like currency. But torture wouldn't undo any of that. Make him face it, she said quietly. Every victim, every account, every lie. Real consequences, not just pain. I want him to see the damage in daylight. Something softened in Kellen's expression. Pride, maybe, or recognition. He nodded once, sharp, then zip-tied Beck's hands with professional efficiency. Distant sirens began their mournful wail. Through Kellen's earpiece came confirmation. Fire alarm triggered. East side clearing now. You've got 8 minutes clean. My jacket? Kellen offered, already shrugging it off. Mina stepped closer, letting him drape the familiar weight across her shoulders. This time it wasn't protection offered in crisis. It was warmth requested in trust. Thank you. They moved through the club's back passages, past the evidence of Kellen's efficiency. No deaths, she noted. Precise violence with clear limits. Even in fury, he'd maintained control. The night air hit them like a blessing, crisp and clean after the club's stale heat. Mina breathed deep, tasting rain and possibility. Kellen's hand settled at the small of her back, warm through the jacket's fabric, guiding her toward the waiting car. Behind them, red and blue lights began to paint the club's walls. Beck would face justice, real justice, the kind that came with paper trails and court dates and restitution, the kind that couldn't be bought off or buried. Mina's zip-tied wrists had left angry welts, but she didn't flinch when Kellen gently examined them. His touch was careful, clinical, checking for serious damage. Yet something in his eyes burned when he looked at the marks. I chose this, she reminded him softly. Staying, fighting, all of it. The sirens grew louder as emergency vehicles approached the club's front entrance. Soon the street would be chaos, firefighters, police, crowds of evacuated patrons. But here in this quiet moment, Kellen's hand still resting at her back, Mina felt strangely peaceful. They walked together through the cold night, neither running nor hiding. The jacket smelled of Kellen's cologne, subtle and expensive, mixing with the sharp scent of rain. Each step took them further from that cursed bathroom, from Beck's schemes, from the weight of secrets finally dragged into light. Morning light slanted through the office windows, casting long shadows across Kellen's desk where stacks of paperwork awaited his signature. His pen moved with deliberate purpose across each document, dismantling the corrupt clinic piece by piece. The shell companies collapsed like dominoes, their assets redirected into a new trust dedicated to rehabilitation scholarships. The board will be completely independent, he explained to Mina, who sat across from him, reviewing the structure. Medical professionals, addiction specialists, community advocates. No syndicate ties, no chances for exploitation. She traced the section outlining Lark's Protected Care Fund. This is more than generous. It's right, he corrected, signing another termination order. The club's management is being purged. Anyone who knew about or enabled Briggs's methods is gone. His new policies filled 3 binders, mandatory reporting channels, surveillance systems with triple redundancy, clear disciplinary procedures overseen by external review boards. The anonymous hotline would route directly to an independent law firm, bypassing internal management entirely. The cameras can't be cut anymore, he continued, pulling up the security specs. Every inch covered, footage backed up off-site. No blind spots, no exceptions. Mina studied his face as he worked, noting the fierce concentration in his eyes. This wasn't just business. This was personal reconstruction, rebuilding broken systems with accountability at their core. When the last document was signed, Kellen stood and crossed to where she sat. Without ceremony or dramatics, he lowered himself to one knee. Not begging, not performing, but making a vow with the same precision he brought to everything else. I am what I am, he said quietly. Lethal when needed, ruthless in business, but with you... His hand found hers, thumb brushing her knuckles. With you, I choose gentleness. No masks, no games, truth between us, always. Mina's fingers tightened around his. I have terms too. Name them. No lies, not even by omission. Safety first, for both of us. And this, she gestured between them. Desire without fear, want without obligation. Done. No hesitation, no negotiation, just acceptance, clean and complete. The weeks that followed blurred together in a stream of positive changes. Kellen handed Mina a key to his penthouse, now their penthouse, on a simple silver ring. Home, he said simply, if you want it. They visited Lark at her new treatment facility, a legitimate clinic with proper medical staff and evidence-based protocols. Her smile, though cautious, held real hope for the first time in years. The physical therapy here actually helps, she told Mina during a sunny afternoon visit, and the counselors listen instead of just pushing pills. The club transformed, too. Gone were the shadowy corners and unspoken rules. The new code of conduct hung in the break room, printed in clear language with direct reporting procedures. Staff moved with confidence, knowing protection existed beyond empty promises. Kellen's personal security remained tight but unobtrusive. He taught Mina the patterns without forcing paranoia. Which routes were safest, which faces to remember, how to spot surveillance without living in fear of it. They built their shared space deliberately, choosing each element together. The bathroom door from that first night became something new, stripped, sanded, and repurposed as a closet panel in their bedroom. Not hidden away, but transformed, a reminder of where they started and how far they'd come. Some would throw it away completely, Mina observed as they finished installing it. No. Kellen ran his hand along the restored wood. Some things shouldn't be forgotten. They should be reclaimed. Their routine settled into comfortable rhythms. Mornings began with coffee and quiet companionship, Kellen reviewing reports while Mina planned her day. She'd taken a position managing charitable outreach for the Rehabilitation Trust, using her experience to identify gaps in care. Evenings found them sharing simple meals in the kitchen, moving around each other with practiced ease. Sometimes they talked business, clinic success rates, club policies, security updates. Sometimes they simply existed in comfortable silence, knowing words weren't always necessary. The penthouse became truly theirs, filled with small touches that spoke of shared life. Mina's books mixed with Kellen's on the shelves, her favorite blanket draped over his preferred chair, their coffee mugs paired in the cabinet. Security remained, but it felt like protection rather than prison. The cameras still watched, the guards still patrolled, but now they represented choice rather than constraint. Kellen's power hadn't diminished. If anything, his reputation for swift justice had grown stronger after Beck's fall, but that power now served clear purpose, safeguarding what mattered without crushing it. This evening, they stood together in their bedroom, the transformed door a quiet testament to change. Mina reached for the light switch, Kellen's hand finding its familiar place at the small of her back. In the moment before darkness, she caught his reflection in the window. Still dangerous, still capable of necessary violence, but gentle here in their private space. They had built this sanctuary piece by piece, truth by truth, choice by choice, day by day. The light clicked off, but neither moved immediately away. In the quiet dark, their breathing synchronized, two people who had chosen each other, chosen trust, chosen to transform fear into strength. The city hummed below, full of threats and possibilities. But here in this space they'd created, safety wasn't just a promise. It was a practice, renewed each day through action and choice. Their vows, spoken and unspoken, held firm. Truth, protection, gentle hands in private spaces, and the constant choice to build something stronger than fear.